Grieving the loss of a loved one is an agonizing process. When that loved one is also a hoarder, that process is completely compromised by the really difficult process of having to deal with all the stuff that they leave behind. My husband left behind a pole barn garage filled to the brim with so much stuff I didn't have room for my vehicles, and a basement filled and stuffed so that I only had a path to the washer and dryer. Whether that stuff is junk, collectibles, treasures, or even garbage, it still has to be dealt with at some time. I wanted to delay that sometime as long as possible. While I watched my husband's hoarding get worse, I felt a greater fear that I wasn't going to be up to the task of having to deal with it. So I put it off and off. When he died, the loss was so monumental that I couldn't even imagine having to deal with the immensity of having to deal and make decisions about all the things that he left behind. But crisis came, and I had to act. So what happened was that late winter rain and early thaw forced my basement to be flooded, and we learned about that the night before I was scheduled for surgery. So my eldest daughter was already here, and she was prepared to help me during my recuperation, and we had to add the extra dilemma of how to deal with a flooded basement as well as my recuperation. Luckily, when I was at a grieving workshop, I remembered hearing about ServiceMaster, and that they had a highly specialized team that dealt with hoarding issues. So I asked my daughter if, while I was in surgery, if she would make a call and see if they could come out and appraise our situation and help. So she did, and Ron, the team leader, came out the very next day. And within 24 hours of when he came, I had an industrial-sized dumpster and a storage pod in my driveway. He came out and he asked us questions. He looked around. He told us that we needed to plan a strategy, and we did. He listened to what I wanted to tell him about the stuff, as well as my husband and what I wanted to happen. He used those opinions to implement a plan that was satisfactory to me, taking into consideration all the things that we needed to get done. And what we needed to get done was we needed to test the air quality for mold. We needed to check mold in the floors, behind the paneling in the walls. But before any of that could get done, we had to get rid of all the stuff. And it was filled. So he helped us figure out the best way to get that done with the most manageable of costs. So now the process is over, the cleanup is done, and there are certain things that really stand out to me. First of all, Ron and his team really listened. They really listened to me and my daughter. They listened to me about my opinions. They listened to me about my husband, about his things and how I wanted it to be handled. And they implemented those things, and that meant a lot. They also were kind and thoughtful. I never heard one disparaging remark ever about my husband or the mess that he left or the things that they had to deal with. They went out of their way, out of the scope of their job, to make sure that I was okay during this tough ordeal. And all of those things meant a lot to me. But more importantly than anything, they protected my husband's memory and his dignity for me, and that I will always be grateful. If you are someone who's facing something like this in your future, I just wanted everyone to know that there is a possibility that it doesn't have to be dealt with alone. In my job before my retirement, I worked with seniors all the time. Now I am one. And I remember having to be the person to try to figure out the options for someone to deal with a really hard experience ahead. And now it's me that has to do that. And when I worked at Senior Services, I worked with seniors all the time. And I wanted to make sure that not only did older adults, but the groups that helped them know that there was a place, a company, that had made sure that they were highly trained and specialized so that they could not only deal with the job of having to do and tackle so much stuff, but that they could deal with the emotions that complicate the issue. And I was so very impressed with Ron and every member of his team. So I wanted to take this opportunity to let everyone know that there is a place like this that can help. And that in my experience as working with older adults, that it's important for that information to get out there. My name is Colleen Simpson. I used to work at Senior Services. I used to work with Medicare and older adults, and I just wanted to make sure that ServiceMaster is not only recognized, but also that it's recommended. And I wanted to take this opportunity to show my gratitude by being able to testify to that. So thank you very much.